Do you have to like a main character to enjoy a game? Mae Borowski is a difficult character to really like. She's the main character, or at least the perspective character, for Night in the Woods. Much oxygen has been spent in the years since the game's release in 2017, trying to pin down exactly what makes this game so memorable and impactful. Mae has a lot to do with that. You know what else is memorable and impactful? The extra content you can get access to on my Patreon feed. For as little as $2 a month at patreon.com/writingwomen, you can get access to videos early, personal blogs, and access to my other writing projects and more. Become a member today! Mae is a 20-year-old girl from the small Rust Belt-inspired town of Possum Springs. I say girl instead of woman very deliberately here, but we can get to that in a minute. When the game opens, she is arriving home on a bus from college. It's her sophomore year, and she has dropped out suddenly and without explanation. Her family forgot the night that she was supposed to be back, and so she has to hike home through the treacherous woods. The first thing that players will notice about Mae is that she is really childish, and I don't mean that she likes things considered childish or anything simple like that. I mean from her very first interaction with another character, the spooky and potentially supernatural janitor guy, it is clear that she's kind of stuck in the mindset of a punk teenager. She's reflexively rude to all authority figures, including her parents, when they are rightfully concerned about what happened to make her suddenly drop out of school and come home. Throughout the game, she mocks the idea of following even the most basic of rules, like not climbing over the power lines around town, and actually, this is one of the many beautiful things about the game and how it is designed. The whole town is filled with unique interactions every day. If you talk to this guy on his porch every time you pass on your way to see your friends, he will give you a completely new response each time, which drives the player to want to see what he says. This creates a ludonarrative harmony because, yeah, Mae's the type of kid to go on this guy's porch just because he tells her not to. And the player controlling Mae is behaving through gameplay in the way that is true to her character and the story because it gives us, the player, a reward of a new interaction. Ludonarrative harmony or dissonance are when gameplay supports or clashes with the narrative of a story. So a character who hates violence having to mow down enemies in a gunfight creates dissonance, but a player being incentivized to allow the character to indulge their flaunting of authority is harmonious. We send Mae up the power lines and all over the roofs of the town because we want to see everything there is to see, and well, F the cops, right? I'll do what I want and be rewarded with rat babies in the belly of a derelict parade float. College didn't work out for Mae, and she has come back largely to try and feel normal again. She tries to fall back into her old patterns from when she was actually a kid and is faced again and again with the ways that everyone else around her is changing. Moving on literally to another town, or figuratively by taking on adult responsibilities like jobs and paying rent. Mae has come home to live with her loving parents for free and balks at the mere mention of ever getting a job or taking some of the load off those around her. A lot of the video essays or game analysis I've seen of Night in the Woods wind up settling on Mae is a jerk when summing up the game or trying to talk about it in a critical way. And don't get me wrong, that is true. She is undeniably a huge jerk. There are a lot of times where the game gives you nothing but bad options for dialogue, because that's the only thing Mae as a character would think of to say in that moment. You can't really metagame by trying to patch things up with her friend B when it looks like a fight is brewing. You're seeing everything in the moment with Mae, and it will only let you react the way she would and escalate the situation. This is a horror game, despite its cute art style, but the monster in the abandoned mine isn't the only horrific thing to be found in Possum Springs. For Mae, every day involves facing the horrors of her own mental illness and the consequences of it rearing its head when she was younger. It is a thing that she is not responsible for having and being unable to cope with, but she still has to face the consequences of it and what she does because of it. Every playthrough of this game will be different, and depending on what you prioritize doing every day, you may find out way more about the town and Mae's family and their history of mental health and behavioral problems. In an absurdly easy-to-miss conversation with her friends Greg and Angus at a party, we learn that Mae's goofy dad used to be a drinker and had to stop because he was a danger to her and her mom. Seriously, I have played this game so many times, and it took till my third playthrough to get this dialogue. As a result, the first time I saw it, I had already experienced a conversation with Angus in the late game about his monstrously abusive family who abused him all throughout his early life. So when Mae drunkenly leans in, not knowing any of this, and in a slurred speech tells Angus that her dad used to hang out with his at a bar and he tenses up, I was mortified. But not Mae. She just keeps going. She seems to have very little ability to pick up social cues from other people and has a habit of oversharing extremely traumatic or off-topic thoughts that derail conversations or make other people uncomfortable. Mae had a dissociative episode as a teen where she suddenly started seeing people as just collections of shapes. After it happened, she had a violent outburst and beat the hell out of another kid. The young kids around Possum Springs still call her Killer, the nickname she hoped would be forgotten by the time she came home. But that's not how small-town life works, especially not when you were born and raised there. Your parents have lived most of their lives there, and your grandparents too. You can uncover many instances of some type of hereditary problems that Mae is dealing with that are pretty much entirely undiagnosed. The town's Dr. Hank is woefully unprepared for any mental problems, and the most he does is have Mae work on a journal to record her thoughts. Her father and grandfather likely didn't even have that and coped with alcohol and violent outbursts. They worked the mines, good blue-collar folks who got their hands dirty. Even without the societal stigma older generations faced for mental illness, blue-collar folks just aren't as likely to recognize what they're experiencing as something requiring a qualified doctor's help. They just try to shake it off and ignore it until they become dangerous to their family and others around them. Mae is the first in a long line of people in her family to get any sort of recognition for what she experiences, but because of the lack of help her father received or her grandfather before that, she has no framework for understanding her own mind, and neither do any members of her family. At one point, Bea pointedly tells Mae that she's pretty sure their mutual friend Greg is bipolar, accounting for his sometimes erratic behavior and mood swings. I read this as her also trying to bring up the possibility of a diagnosis for Mae as well, because Mae and Greg are so similar. The game never goes so far as to confirm this, but it's an interesting suggestion. One that can also be completely missed depending on how you played each run of the game. Bea is the person Mae finally breaks down and confesses to about what happened in school. When she was a teenager, the big incident was sort of treated with an attempt at therapy. But good old Dr. Hank isn't really qualified to help you with something like that. At college, she was okay at first, but then it started to happen again, and it terrified her so badly she couldn't even leave her dorm. She fell into deep depression and finally couldn't take it anymore, and so tried to come home, hoping that things could be normal for her again. But in her absence, the town moved on. The local grocery store closed and was replaced by a superstore further away from town near the highway. Greg and his boyfriend Angus are planning to move to the city of Bright Harbor, where they won't have to deal with small-town bigotry or abusive families anymore and can just be free. Bea is older. She has been forced to step into the role of an adult by the death of her mother and breakdown of her father. Mae just wants everyone to hang out and jam at band practice again, or do petty crimes with Greg, but they can only do so much when they're trying to be adults, and Mae is dragging them back down. Mae is desperately trying to not grow up as a form of self-defense toward her own mind. She tries to talk to the teenagers around town, but they have no use for her as an adult who isn't 21 to buy beer and also doesn't have a car or driver's license. She seems startled that they see her as an adult when she sees herself still as one of them. Carefree and hanging out in the old flooded trolley tunnels instead of worrying about work or bills. She sees herself and her family as on the lower income side and is surprised that one kid calls her neighborhood the rich one. Mae missed the sound of the train running through town at night and can't reconcile that someone who had it a bit worse off than her hates that sound because her family can only afford a house right next to the tracks instead of one in town away from them. It can be hard to reconcile that other people might have had it a bit worse than you when your own ability to meet societal expectations of success in life due to mental illness makes you feel like the bottom of the social and economic ladder. Mae is white-knuckling through life at this point and barely making it through each day, looking for a way to save herself and those around her from the cosmic horror lurking below town. At the end of the game, she realizes nothing is going to save us forever, but a lot of things can save us today. In a game so layered with metaphor, that sentiment rings true for the player in their own lives. It's something I really identify with as someone who also experiences crippling mental health problems. I watch Mae's angry outbursts and I'm reminded of the rages that come on when something relatively tiny triggers my PTSD. I grew up in a town similar to Possum Springs, except for us, it's a farming community instead of a mining one. Instead of just parties in the woods, we had them in cornfields, tractors, cows, and horses in place of minecarts. Maybe the similarities I can draw between myself and my hometown and Mae's fictional world make me more sympathetic to her as a character. I understand why a lot of people struggle to like Mae as a protagonist, but it's hard for me to not be compassionate toward her experience. I think it's super reductive to just call her childish and awful without bringing up all the factors outside her control that made her that way. Once she finally admits to somebody, anybody, what happened to her, she is finally able to try and heal from it. She's trying, more so by the end of the game than at the beginning, and that's sometimes all we can do. Get up each day and try again. She isn't to blame for her mental health issues, but she is learning to adapt and be better to those around her, even if that doesn't fix the things already broken. Thank you for watching this video on one of my favorite games of all time. I would put this in my top 10 list easy. I'm planning another video about this game where I talk about bees, so look out for that if you want more Night in the Woods content. Thank you so much to my lovely patrons out there. Some of you have been with me from the very beginning, and I truly, truly, deeply appreciate your support. I could not do this without you. I say this in a lot of my videos, and it remains true in each one. If you'd like to join my lovely patrons, you can find me at patreon.com/writingwomen, like I mentioned before, and support for just $2 a month. My patrons are up on screen right now, and this could be your name in the next video. I post personal blogs on there, along with some behind-the-scenes content and early video access. Thank you all for spending this time with me today. I hope you have a good one.